I'm not a journalist. I just play one on stage. So pardon me while I get in character. Damn you! Now you've gone and friggin' done it. You started ruining the business model of newspapers with that Craigslist thing of yours. Then you allowed anybody to publish from anywhere in these blots you write. And then you distracted everybody with that Facebook thing. But now you've gone too flippin' far. You've attacked all you tweeties. You've attacked the sanctity of the article. I'm back. So, when Brian Stelter, the amazing star of Page One, the movie, and the young reporter at the New York Times, went to cover the Joplin tornado, he did amazing things, as he always does, tweeting from there. That's all he could do was tweet. He'd run out, he had no paper, he had no pencils, he forgot them. He had his phone, there was no connectivity, all he could do was SMS, and he begged his desk back at the Times to take his tweets and turn them into a story, so he could keep on working and reporting. Andy Carvin, who you're hearing from here at 140, the amazing Andy Carvin, has been doing phenomenal work covering the Arab Spring, of course. And what strikes me about what Andy has proven in Twitter and the Arab Spring is that news is now beginning to mimic the architecture of the internet. It's end to end, right? The witnesses are telling the world, and they don't need us. But Andy still looks down on this and adds value. He picks out the good stuff, he finds the good people, he vets, he questions, he answers, he debunks rumors, he adds incredible value. So based on these things and a few other things, I had the temerity to question whether the article, the story, was still the atomic unit of news. That there weren't all kinds of new forms and means of news. Well, man, you would have thought that I'd just put your mom in prison and poisoned her apple pie. The anger that came up online because I dared to question the article. And I wasn't trying to kill the article. People said, he's killing the article. You're replacing the article with Twitter. No, I was not doing that. I was questioning whether it was the only way to do news anymore, whether we always had to do that. If news is truly a process, as Andy shows, right? Andy's thing never ends in a product. He just keeps adding value all day long. In the midst of the Arab Spring, he did 1,300 tweets in 20 hours. The process was going by. Now, people found out news from that. They created articles of that, but it didn't have to always be an article. News can take many forms. So I dared say that, and one person online said that I was trying to replace the traditional elements of journalism. Frederick Fallot said last week that I was partaking in the collective glorification of approximate journalism. Well, what I was saying was that the article is a luxury. Now they thought that meant that it was not needed. No, the article is a precious thing. It takes a lot of money and time and effort to make an article. And how many of the articles you read in newspapers, how many of the stories God knows you see on local TV really add value? They repeat what you already know. They give you background again and again and again and again when a link could do a better job of that. The article is the byproduct of the process of news. Pardon me. They call it a narrative because it has a narrator. A story has a storyteller. It's my job as the storyteller to tell you the story. You got it? That means I decide what the story is, I decide what goes in it, I decide what doesn't go in it, I decide what's the beginning and the end, because a story has to have a beginning and an end so it fits in the hole I put it in. That's part of my main skill. That's what I do for a living. And when you question the form of the story, you're trying to put me out of a job. F you! There's something else going on here. That's part of it. This fear of what happens with a story. But I think there's something more. I I'm very proud of myself that I haven't yet plugged my last book, What Would Google Do? Still out in hardback, coming out in paperback in September. But I will mention that I have a new book called Public Parts, How Sharing in the Digital Age Improves How We Work and Live, coming out Simon & Schuster September 27th, at a bookstore, online, and audio near you. Well, in the process of doing that book, I did a lot of research on the notion of making publics. It's really about the tools that we talk about: Twitter, Facebook, the web, blogs, Flickr, YouTube, all of our beloved, dear tools that we have as the net, that we, my friends, must protect. And so I'm looking at those tools, and I did research back to Gutenberg, believing that the press really gives us a lot of lessons about what's going to happen now with our world now. One thing I found out was that when the book came out, it scared people to death, just like the internet does today. It scared them because it changed how they see the world. There are some great researchers in Denmark who talked about the Gutenberg parenthesis. And before the parenthesis, knowledge and information were passed around orally or copied, remixed, changed as it went. It was a process. The book came out and suddenly knowledge was pressed onto paper. Many copies under your name, owned, distributed widely. That scared authors at first. But it also had a huge impact on the public, because it changed their cognition of the world. It changed how they viewed the world. The same way as the discovery of a new world did. Everybody had a map, they knew what the world was, and suddenly there's this new world there. Well, that's what the internet is to our world today. And the net is this Gutenberg press changing the world, allowing people to create new things. So in the Gutenberg parenthesis, these researchers from the University of Southern Denmark argue, the world went through a big migraine headache, going from this oral process world into this fixed serial world. And that's how we see the world. And we're coming out on the other end of the parenthesis now, where it doesn't necessarily go back, but it does get us back to an idea of we're oral, we talk a lot, it's about conversation, it's a process, we all pass around everything, it gets remixed along the way, there's no beginning and there's no end, no alpha and omega. And so when I questioned the holiness of the article, I found out I was questioning the key way that people look at the world, and they get very emotional about it, they get very angry about it. But I think it's quite vital to keep doing the holy work that you're doing, tearing that world apart. Not because it's bad, not because articles will never go away. They won't. They add value. They are a luxury. I don't want to get rid of them. I want to raise them up so they actually friggin' tell us something. I want them to include new information, include new things. I want them to be the process of truly adding value to a process of news. And so I look at that and I say, what you're doing with Twitter, what we do with all these tools, we need to keep doing and change and challenge the process. So following me is going to be a friend of mine named John Payton, who's a wonderful, wonderful man who now runs, he'll tell you about it, Journal Register, a newspaper company. And he put digital first and print last with his company. The Guardian today announced following him that they are now digital first. What that really means is that digital becomes the driver of where we go. And the problem we have, the thing that we cannot keep on doing, is to define the new world in terms of the old. One more point. When the Gutenberg press started rolling sometime between 1440 and 1450, it took, according to Elizabeth Eisenstein, the key scholar on his work, 50 years before the book took on its own form. The book still mimicked scribes' thoughts. It was still called automatic handwriting. People didn't create new books until 50 years. It didn't affect society for 100 years, clearly. By that math, we are now at the year 1467. We cannot imagine what the future holds, what the internet is, what these new forms are. It is all so new. It is too new to clamp it down. It is too new to regulate it. It is too new to define it even. And it is too new to stop experimenting. So I'm not questioning the article. I'm not trying to get you to either. But I do want us all to question our assumptions.